Africa is different. We should not be following what Europe and what North America is doing simply because that's what they're doing there. But on the other hand, we should not be opposing what Europe and North America are doing simply because that's what they're doing. I think that that is as dangerous as mimicking the West. There's certain things that are happening in Europe, testing, masks, a superb healthcare system that we should copy. There are certain things that Cuba is doing, providing outstanding healthcare system in a country that is under sanctions from its next door neighbor, the United States, doesn't have much money, but seems to have put together an outstanding healthcare system. We've got to look at what they're doing and copy it. Now, but what I think is important, and a very prime reason for the discussion today, has been the need for the unity and the connection between knowledge and power. And in many regards, I think that that has been too absent in the continent of Africa. Though there are those who will say that there are many other parts of the world where there seems to be a disjunction between knowledge and power as well. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that decision-making is important. It is key, but it must be informed. It must follow research. It must follow the mental efforts to do serious work. We've got to stop having announcements and instead have informed action. We've got to have policies which have been thought through, where a lot of work has been done by very good minds. I very much enjoyed listening to Amandla, and I very much enjoyed listening to Nasir's comments about the two brilliant women in his state who did so much work to make things happen in Kaduna. And if I can borrow from Africa's greatest musician and borrow from his comments, Fela Anikulapo Kuti, we must have no arrangements. What we need is solid work in the public interest. I want to take us back to the original theme of this series, which Teresa so splendidly put together. And that was the theme of leadership. Because if there's one thing that is so obvious and is at the heart of this, is that if we are going to overcome the challenge that we have, and it's the greatest challenge we have had since the partition back in 1884, it's going to be leadership. And in this respect, we can't blame the colonial powers as the excuse of our problem if we fail to act. And I don't really think that we can blame China, though some countries are trying to do that. How we succeed, whether we succeed, is really going to come down to the quality of leadership that is exhibited in the coming years. And that's why I thought that Teresa was brilliant in putting together this series focused on leadership. Now, what do I mean by leadership? And what is central to leadership? First, I think, is that any political leader at this time has got to outline a very, very clear vision of where he's taking this country to. He's got to explain how he sees the problem. He's got to explain how he analyzes it. And he's got to explain to people regularly what solutions he has. Now, he's got to do that for two reasons. He's first got to mobilize a concerned, a worried, a scared population behind a series of tough actions. And in addition to that, he's got to, in a sense, display to all of them that he understands and he knows what he's talking about. People want to be led by people who they think know more about things than themselves and they want to follow them. And he's got to communicate that and give them confidence. Now, for some of the students who are here, who will be taking a course I teach in Africa next year, I'd like to commend to you to all read the speech made by the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni. Now, I know that in referring to one African head of state who did a great speech, I've probably upset 45 other heads of states, but I think that the speech that he made at the outset of this, where he laid out the problem and what he sees the solution to, was a very good speech, and it should be read by people. To the extent that our immune systems are governed by how emotionally content one is, a great speech by a good leader helps improve your immune system, in that it gives you a sense that, yes, we as a nation, we can overcome it. The next thing I think leadership must do is it's got to outline in very clear terms a series of steps that have to be taken for us to get to that destination and for us to achieve that vision. Otherwise, it's just another dream that somebody comes up with. And those practical steps being outlined of central importance. Then he's got to put together a team of very competent people across the ethnic divide of Africa, across religions, across income groups, who can demonstrate that they can get things done. And he and the leadership has to, without any hesitation, fire, sack, dismiss those individuals who clearly cannot make the grade. In a time at which, or on an issue on which hundreds of thousands of lives are at stake, there simply can't be room for anybody who is not up to that grade. But I go back again and again, mental effort, research work, serious analysis, informing outstanding leadership is the route that we have to take. Now, in the coming years, African leaders will fall into two groups. And I all hope that they fall into the first group. They will either be those who are part of the solution and have their names written on the walls of glory as people who, at the moment when Africa needed them, led. And of them, it will be said for generations to come that it was when they were in office, it was when they led that the renewal of Africa started. And I hope that all of them are in that category. There will also be those, sadly, and I'm sure there'll be a few, who don't come up to the mark. And in fact, will be part of the problem. And as a result of a failure to lead, hundreds of thousands of people will die. We should be very explicit about the consequences of failed leadership. In their case, for 100 years to come, their names will be written on the wall of shame. Now, for each one of us on this talk today, we are all in our separate ways, we are leaders. We may not be leaders at a national level or at a provincial level, but we are leaders in our community. And I think it is the historic responsibility of each and every one of us to make extraordinary efforts to provide extraordinary leadership at our own levels to supplement the leadership that we hopefully get at the national level so that we can look back at this period as a time at which Africa faced an enormous challenge, but in the words of our African-American brothers, they said, we shall overcome, and we did. Thank you very much. Teresa.